for Historic Preservation recording of the Sarasota County meeting. It's the public meeting about the Blackburn Point Bridge. Today is June 11th.
I think like when I first got started, it was like a little pushback because I didn't know what this thing.
We're gonna go. It doesn't need to be on me.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Nobody makes the bridge anymore. So the parts you have. That's fine.
So they said 20 million times 75 years, the lifespan of the bridge. That's still a
That is, and that has not been made available to the public at this point in time.
The report is not done yet, we're finding it, but we are doing it called the Natural Resources Evaluation. And as part of that, we're creating all of this.
this area drainage? Apparently the path
Can you get the words that you missed?
T-shirt.
You got it.
We had a beautiful
They don't like it. It's a good thing.
attended Sunday school for like 15 years without missing a Sunday when he was growing up. Then he was a juvenile delinquent. When I met him, he was a juvenile delinquent. Not quite, but he was getting there. $6 million or $35 million. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I know that's increased, but the way it's increased, they said, all right, this is project limits. I use that part. It's interesting to me is that to finish this group, they would have to, if they're going to do 2 bridges, they have to do 2 bridges on the other side. And then, but if they do for one of those plans, yeah, it's going to be. How we're going to do that for bridges? I mean, we have to take the library, all that. Almost every house that we live in, like ACK.
Well, have fun. Hey, good luck there, assistant producer.
I wonder when this was built. It's been a long time. I read it. And last time they decided to find 10 crashes without being towed. Two crashes. Yeah, I think so. Well, it does. We've always got licenses. There is a small industry now. It's small. See, crash too. You don't change it. It's certainly does, and I was going to say, what doesn't stop it from adding either. I'm curious as to how I mean, there's stuff constant. I just don't hear the time I go over like the diamond one stuff, but there's a lot of times I'm sitting there. That's part of the thing. You know that when you buy I agree. It's just like this, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. They did get those. Oh, speed. Yeah. Okay, okay.
Good job on the I checked it. So perfect. Perfect. I was looking for you before, but you didn't have a blue shirt on. Yeah, perfect.
Good job. Big year. She's been there, got a t-shirt right here. Thanks, So you think Sue came in this afternoon? She came back? Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, she looks That's funny. I love it. I guess he did. I guess he did. That's right. I like all that stuff. Good for him. And he's very This goes into one of the long things like the piece of Take me what's it? You can mail it, it says. Mail to the address. It's like heaven. Oh, he must have been happy. Back to the good hospital food. You find out whatever go on. He's going to ask him, can he rent a room? Can I? Yeah, but, oh yeah, yeah, exactly. We've been certainly good. Yeah, those kinds of things. Yeah, exactly. There's not that many people on KCT. They can sound like if they was catastrophic thing that possibly happened. It's ridiculous. one here. Oh, and she knows in a lot of places.
First of all, I would like to thank our hosts for tonight, the Church of the Holy Spirit. This has been a really, really great place to have these meetings at, the two different rooms to facilitate the discussions and the conversation. It's been great, so we thank them for our hospitality. This is obviously a place of worship, so let's all be respectful as we have our discussion tonight. And so, secondly, thank you to everyone here for attending tonight. It's been a really good process, I think, for the Blackburn Point Bridge Planning, Environment, and Design Study, Development Study, to initiate a conversation about if we are going to replace the bridge, how would we do it? All right, and that is really the conversation tonight. Let me start out. My name is Spencer Anderson. I'm the Transportation Director for Sarasota County. I'm here with several of my coworkers, and tonight is our third formal public meeting for the Blackburn Point Bridge Planning, Development, and Environment Study, PD&E study. And what the purpose of the PD&E study is to examine alternatives for a project, a future project. Then it also includes a do-nothing opportunity, which in this case, if you see on our boards, is called the no-build option. In this case, that's not do nothing, it's do a major repair of the existing structure. So tonight, as we move forward, one thing I want to make sure everybody's clear of, we're not making any decisions tonight. The next step of this is a conversation with the county commission, and that's where we'll get some policy guidance from the elected officials on what to do for the next steps. They will most likely not be making final decisions either. They will be telling us what to do for our next step. Right now, the project in its whole is funded study and a partial design. There is currently no funding for construction. So there is you may have seen some of the costs out there, they are not insignificant. So if it were going to go to construction, we would have to have a lot of help to get there from probably our state and federal partners to help with funding. So with that, Jim Phillips is a professional engineer. He is here with us tonight. He's our consultant on the project. If you have been to one of our previous meetings, you've heard Jim give the presentation. He does a great job. Please be nice to him. And then afterwards, we'll follow up with question and answers. So you can wait till the end of his presentation, and then we'll do Q&A so we make sure the questions are clear. And I think we'll pass around the microphone. Everybody can say their questions on the mic, and we get everybody nice and clear, and we can help with responses. We may not have the best responses tonight because we might not know everything you're asking us, but we should be able to follow up with that at some other time. Okay?
If you're talking to the mic, you need to put the mic closer than this man has been doing.
This way?
That's
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. See, I don't like using mics because the Lord gave me a better voice than a microphone, so just kidding. All right, Mike, sorry, Jeff. You don't need that. I'll take this.
Thank you. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Just a quick note. For those of you sitting right here, I'm going to apologize in advance, but I'll be pointing at things on the screen and whatever, so there'll be times when I'm in the way a little bit. I apologize for that. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the agenda for tonight, pretty simple. We're going to talk a little bit about the PD&E process, project purpose and need, existing conditions, the alternatives that we're looking at, project schedule, and then how to comment. Seems like okay. So, project development environment study, PD&E study, follows the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and it involves these key components, right? So we have purpose and need, so we need to establish why are we doing the study. We then conduct environmental studies, and these are wide-ranging. They include historic resources, they include environmental resources. Then we look at alternatives. We do alternatives analysis. After that, we get into developing all the bunch of technical reports that document everything that we've done. And then probably where we are right now, that goes from the beginning of the project all the way through the end, is the public involvement phase. So and at the end of that, we will produce the environmental documents for approval. We'll talk a little bit more about the schedule as we go through it, but basically we've gone through several alternative meetings. We're here in the third one now. Following this, there is the meeting that Spencer talked about with the county, and then we'll go ahead with the final process of the documents. Why this is not. Okay, so the purpose of the project is review alternatives to replace the Blackburn Point Bridge on Blackburn Point Road over the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway, Sarasota County. The need for the project is based on these primary categories here. Bridge deficiencies, so we have a lot of issues with the older bridge. Safety, and then modal interrelationships, which is a kind of fancy technical term for how do we account for all the users that are affected by the bridge. So that's vehicles, trucks, pedestrians, marine users, boaters, everybody. Project limits, I think everybody knows where the job is here in Sarasota County. And just a little closer up, I think it's important to note because there were some questions about this. So we're not doing anything at the Dryman Bay Bridge. That's where the project starts. And it goes across over here near the marina. So it doesn't include improvements on Blackburn Point Road over US 41 in those areas, just within the area of the bridge. So bridge history, it's an old bridge. It was constructed in the 20s. It's one of 8 remaining highway swing bridges in the state of Florida. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places and the Sarasota County Register of Historic Places. It's a very nice example of what we call a pony truss swing span. PD&E project will follow the requirements of NEPA with regard to all of the impacts and potential impacts to historic resources. So let's look at the deficiencies. See a list here. We'll show you some pictures of the steel and the piling and those sort of things, mechanical. So everything on the bridge is kind of in a relatively poor condition. And there's 2 basic drivers for all of that. There's one, that the bridge is very low to salt water. If the bridge had been built 20 feet higher, many of these problems may not exist, or they wouldn't be in the advanced state of deterioration that they are. But unfortunately, it's very low to the water, and the very most important part of the bridge, which is the part right in the center where it pivots, is the lowest point to the salt water. The other thing is inadequate design, and I don't want to go back and blame my prior history of the engineers. At the time, they were doing what was standard and so forth, but they were designing for Model A cars, and they were using different types of materials and things. And it's interesting, when bridges like this first started being built in Florida. Obviously, Florida was developed a little bit later than, say, the Northeast and some of those areas. So they took some of the same details that they used up there. You see all these little pieces of steel all riveted together and so forth, and they put them in a saltwater environment. So unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are just inadequate because of the way the bridge was designed. It also wasn't designed to our current standards, which we'll go through and talk about a number of issues that it doesn't meet, that primarily are related to safety. So here we see some of the truss members, and these are kind of typical conditions. If you walk out on the bridge, you'll see that almost every member of the bridge has advanced deterioration, corrosion. Most of these members have been repaired many times. We can see plates added on, things like that. So that's being done to keep the bridge so that it can carry the traffic that it does. But it's going on a regular basis. You see some other members of the top cord, same sort of thing. Both top cord and bottom cord of the truss, as well as all the rest of the structure. If you would go down underneath the bridge, there's stringers and floor beams and other members that they're all in a similar condition. So, just to give you an idea, there have been major repairs done, 1981, 1987, 1995. But even after that, this is a planned repairs from 2021. And this is really just showing you all the gusset plates. So gusset plates are where these members connect together. So you have individual elements, pieces of steel, they come together, and the gusset plates bolt them all together. And almost all of the gusset plates are in need of replacement. The county has they put a lot of effort into keeping the bridge working. We can see here a list of repairs from '97. These are primarily categorized as they're structural, they're mechanical, they're fender system. We don't have much on the electrical here, but the electrical is also in a fairly poor condition. So marine vulnerabilities, right? So one of the key things, I think everybody's familiar with what happened not too long ago at Francis Scott Key Bridge. And of course, those of us who've been in Florida for a long time remember the Skyway. So this bridge is not designed to withstand vessel impact. So the vessels that are using it right now, the barges that use the channel, if one of those were to get out of alignment and hit something, it could cause some fairly severe damage to the bridge. And then, as I mentioned before, we have all these low members that are down in the splash zone. So from design purposes in Florida, we consider the splash zone to be within 12 feet of the water level, because that's where we see the most deterioration. It doesn't matter whether it's concrete, steel, whatever you put in there, that's where it tends to see the worst. Bridge width deficiency, so the bridge is 16-foot clear width between the trusses. And so that's substandard. We'd like to have wider than that so that if a vehicle breaks down on the bridge, an emergency vehicle can get around that and get to its destination. And we have a lot of pedestrian and bicycle use on the bridge. I think anybody that goes out there now, I've been kind of going out to the bridge for a number of years, and when I went out about 5 years ago, I was really surprised at how many more cyclists there were using the bridge pedestrians than in the past. It is an evacuation route, which is why we're concerned about the ability to pass a stalled vehicle on the bridge. And all of the alternatives that are proposed for replacement would provide enough width, whether it's between a sidewalk curb and a car barrier, or just within the lanes for traffic. Bridge railings are another area of concern. So all bridges now are designed to have crash-tested railings. These are to prevent trucks, large vehicles from deviating off the where they're supposed to be. And it's a little bit of a elevated concern here, because as you can see, all we've got is these little pipes in here. If a truck were to crash through that and hit these truss members, it's going to cause some pretty severe damage to the truss. This is another key factor for us is the channel clearances. So the existing clearances are 51 feet horizontal and 9.3 feet vertical. U.S. Coast Guard guide clearances here are 90 feet horizontal, 21 feet vertical. So, because of these clearances, primarily because of the horizontal clearance, the Coast Guard has determined this bridge to be an unreasonable obstruction to navigation in Gulf Intercoastal Waterway. So, I've worked with the Coast Guard a lot over the years, and we know that the vertical is not really the driving thing for them. It's because for them, vertical means you have to open the bridge. So if you don't have vertical clearance, you got to open the bridge. But horizontal is a big safety concern to the Coast Guard. Crash history. We picked up the crash data from the past 5-year period, 19 through 2024. 10 crashes were reported within the project area, plus within 700 feet of the ends of the bridge, so about a 1,600 foot length. There were 2 crashes involved pedestrians and bicycles, with the bicycle crash occurring on the bridge, pedestrian crash occurring west of the bridge. So, and if you had a chance to look at the chart of accidents out there, you see that the vehicle accidents are sort of clustered right around the ends of the bridge, which is kind of what you'd expect. You've got a single lane bridge, people making decisions of who's got the right way to go, and creating some accidents in there. Any of the new alternatives would address those deficiencies that we have there. Multimodal relationships, again here we're looking to accommodate everybody. So the proposed improvements, regardless of whether it's the single lane bridge, the 2-lane bridge with 1 sidewalk, or the 2-lane bridge with 2 sidewalks, whether it's a bascule bridge or a swing bridge, all of those would provide adequate means to accommodate bicycles and pedestrians. Would also replace the bridge deck, which is a steel open grid now, with a solid deck surface, which is safer and a lot more comfortable, particularly to cyclists, motorcyclists. Okay, so let's look at what the considerations are. So we always have things that are constraints that kind of guide what we can do and what we can't do. We study those thoroughly before we start looking at alternatives. So here's some of the key ones here. Obviously, we have the fish house here, and there's a driveway right there, so we need to maintain access to that. That sort of limits any ability to shift the alignment of the bridge to the south, and it also has a limitation on how much you can elevate the bridge through here, right? Because you gotta address that entryway there. Same thing for the KCP library on the north side. So the library itself is set back a little bit, so if you looked at the boards carefully, you'll see that there is an alignment for a temporary bridge, and it does kind of squeeze in there, so it doesn't impact the library itself, but it does impact temporarily impacts the parking area. We also have the park areas, so we have parks in multiple locations, and we have driveways that are entered into the parks. So the key points that affect the ability to raise the bridge are these driveways here and the driveway here to the park. We also have our main environmental areas that we're concerned about. Number one, we've got a historic bridge, so anything to replace the bridge is an impact to that historic resource. We've got the park areas, and we try not to impact parks, particularly on a permanent basis. And then there's the natural environment. So we have some boards back there to talk about the various species that are endangered or threatened within the area that we have to be careful. And then a big one is traffic, maintaining traffic. The detour route down to Albany, 10.5 miles. And I think you'll talk about it, but you see that with all the alternatives, it's proposed that we maintain traffic throughout construction, right? With some means. The one exception to that we'll talk about is with no. So the alternatives, there's no build, and then there's replacement with either a swing bridge or a bascule bridge. So the no build, one of the things we do when we're looking at comparing alternatives is we have to try and put them so that it's close to apples when we're talking about cost, right? And that's a challenge because the alternatives don't have the same lifespan. Meaning, for example, let's start with this one, the no build. We keep the bridge in service as long as we can by repairing it. And we have, shown in blue here, these are the costs to operate and maintain the bridge. And from a cost standpoint, those are going to go up over time for two reasons. One, we have inflation, and then we also have ongoing deterioration. So there's some engineering studies that give us guidance on what sort of factor percentage to apply to something like a bridge like this. And the older it gets, the more expensive it gets to maintain. We then have a need to fix those items on the bridge that become a threat to safety of the bridge, the capacity of the bridge, and those types of things. So what we've done is we've looked at the bridge, we've gone through all the inspection reports, and from those we've put together a series of packages of repairs. And that's kind of like what's the really most important things we got to do now, then kind of what's next on the list, and next, kind of going down the road. So, but even if you follow this and you say, okay, 5 years we're going to do these major repairs, and we have more repairs, additional repairs, everything at some point is going to reach a critical stage where it's going to have to be replaced, right? Nothing lasts forever. So in order to put this into perspective and cost, we do these life cycle cost analysis, and we make some assumptions about how many repairs we can do before we get to the big guy out here somewhere at which we're going to replace the bridge. So then we can take all those costs over time and we can bring them back to a current present value for comparison. Now, a bridge has a pretty long life. This one was designed probably for a 50-year service life, and it's been going on for 100 years. So somebody did something right. But eventually everything comes to it. So the analogy I like to use for people is to think about an automobile, a truck, a vehicle, something, not something that you have for a toy, but the thing that you use every day to get to work, to drive around, keep your business. And if you have a car as it's getting to a point in deterioration, and you have to make a decision. Am I going to take it in for those next repairs, or am I going to get a new one? So if you imagine, if we take this 20-plus year schedule, we shortened it down and said, okay, this is an automobile, and we say, well, we think we're at 150,000 miles on the vehicle, so we're probably going to need a new transmission in the near future. So we're going to think about that. Then we may have some other repairs and so forth, and these go on until you're going to get to the big item, which may be the engine has to be replaced, or the whole chassis on the thing is rusted out so much because you live in a saltwater environment, and now you've got to replace the bridge. So, and these studies are not, it's not an exact science because there's a lot of assumptions that go into it. Right? We have to look at what the interest rates are and inflation rates and those sort of things. So we study these by looking at a wide range of parameters. And then we have some guidance from the FHWA and Florida DOT on what factors to use in comparing alternatives for bridges. And we apply those. And in this case, what we have come up with is that $31 million is an equivalent, today's value, when looking at that compared to the replacement costs. Right? So if you remember from the replacement cost, the least costly one was $37 million. So it's still cheaper to keep maintaining the bridge than it is to replace it right now. But at some point, you're going to get to that replacement. And we can see that those numbers are not completely, different. It's not like it's $5 million to keep it and $37 million to replace it. The numbers are not that far apart. Now, this is cost only. It's not taking into account other things of value, right? So just like with your car. If you had an old car and you're looking at replacing it, you might say, yeah, it might cost a little more, but I really want to get that backup camera. I want to have the electronics. I want to have these other things for safety and so forth. So those considerations are not in here, but they are taken into account when we look at the evaluation that we did. So, particularly looking at this bridge and looking at what is the most likely thing that puts you in that point where you say, okay, now you really have to replace it. Unfortunately, like I said, the bridge is in poor condition everywhere, so it could be something in the truss or whatever. But one that certainly jumps out are these piles down here. So the whole bridge, that main pivot, all sits on a concrete cap that's supported on piles. Those are currently rated condition state 3, which the definition of that is it indicates that loss of section, deterioration, spalling, cracking, and other deficiencies have seriously affected primary structural components. And if you look, you might look at here close and say, well, that pile there looks really good. It looks like it's almost brand new, right? Well, that's because somebody put fiberglass jacket on it, right? So that's what you're looking at. But the other piles were also jacketed years ago, and the jackets are failing. So what that indicates is, unfortunately, we learned years ago that the early stage jackets that were put on piles, really all they did was hide what was going on inside. So it was kind of worse than putting a jacket on. So now when we look at doing jacket replacements, we look at the condition of the jacket, and we look at these and we say, those are not candidates for a jacket replacement. We might put one on there, but it's not going to do much because when you take that jacket off, we're going to see very heavy deterioration inside that. So that's and the reason that I'm focusing on the substructure here is that this is what ties in with the issue we have with the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard has said they will not issue a permit, which you would need a Coast Guard permit if you put something in the water. They will not issue a permit unless you're going to provide the 90-foot horizontal planes. So that kind of puts us between a little bit of a rock and hard place there. And that's why that's likely, when you really have not much choice. So let's talk about just that first anticipated repair. And the reason I want to talk about this is I want to make sure everybody understands that there are impacts to these repairs on traffic. So we're going to replace the steel grid deck. We're going to replace approximately 20% of those steel members. They're that bad, they need to be replaced. And to be honest, if we were going to truly do a historic preservation of this, which we do on bridges as well, you would want to make sure to get those back to being more like they were originally, as opposed to the ones I showed you, all the plates slapped on them, and bolts and all those sort of things. So, and in order to do that, and to completely clean and paint the structure, we need to take the load off of it. So when we go to take the load off of it, we have to support it. It's kind of two basic ways you can do that. You can't just take the load off of it in its normal position because it's blocking navigation. So you can either pick the bridge up on barges, take it off to a facility somewhere, do the rehabilitation, bring it back. That's probably the best way to do it because you can do better repair work in a facility like that than you can out of the water. The other way, which we've done on some bridges, is to put in some temporary supports underneath here and do it in place. But either way, you're looking at several months anyway of time when the bridge is out of service for vehicles. So. All right, let's look at the typical sections. I think hopefully everybody had a good chance to look at these on the boards out there. And basically, we've got a single lane bridge with one sidewalk. We have a 2-lane bridge with one sidewalk, and 2-lane bridge, 2 sidewalks. And just jumping through those, you can see that all of them provide adequate room, so the total width is enough. We can pass the stalled vehicle. They all provide facilities for pedestrians and bicycles. They just have some different features and different, pretty straightforward thing. So initially, we looked at 2 different alignments for the permanent bridge, building on the existing alignment, and then building shifted to the north. We dropped the north alignment as a permanent alternative because of the impacts to the library and park area. But we have kept that. You see it on the boards back there. So the temporary alignment is still an option where we've used it as for a temporary bridge while we do the bridge replacement, so that we can keep traffic flowing through the replacement process. Let's look at the vertical alignment now. So the idea here is we'd like to get the bridge higher so we can get better clearance underneath and reduce the number of openings, which obviously helps us reduce impacts to traffic every time the bridge operation goes through. And so this shows here, and I want to make sure everybody understands this, it's like an exaggerated vertical scale. So 1 foot horizontal is shown like 5 feet vertical. And we do that just so you can actually see the difference in these. If we were right on top of each other, we wouldn't be able to tell. But we get about 5 feet of additional height at the ends of the bridge. It's still not so much that we can't get down and tie into where the driveways are on either side, so that still works well. And it does give us an increase in clearance to about 14 feet, which you'll see in a minute. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually quite a bit at this particular bridge site. The other thing I want you to look at here is the profile of the bridge. So the existing bridge is virtually flat across the bridge, and there's a fairly low slope coming up on either side. And that's a benefit for a single lane bridge because when you pull up to one side of the bridge, you can see through the trusses to the other side, and you can see if there's a car coming, right? One of the negatives of raising the bridge is we now have a profile here, and by calculations, we don't meet the standards for sight distance. So if you're pulling up there, you would not be able to see clearly if there's somebody coming the other way. So for that reason, and because the standards for single lane bridges, actually they don't recommend them for more than 100 vehicles per day. We have a lot more than that. But they do say if you are going to use a single lane bridge for higher volumes of traffic or where you have sight issues, you want to signalize it. So we would propose that the single lane bridge alternatives be signalized. Stop at either side. So not just when the bridge is opening, but for regular traffic, you stop when one side goes, stop when the other side goes. This is studies that we did using information provided by the county. They actually put a scanner out there, a laser type scanner, and recorded the height of all the vessels going through. They provided that data to us, and we were able to then From that, to look at 14 feet, determine we get 48% reduction. Round terms, 50% reduction in the number of openings of the bridge. So that's a big benefit. Looking at the bridge alternatives, it's single lane or 2 lane, and then the number of sidewalks, it gives us basically 6 combinations of bridges, right? Single lane bridge in a swing or a basket, 2 lane bridge with 1 sidewalk, a swing or basket, and 2 lane bridge with 2 sidewalks, swing or basket. So look at the swing span. So the swing span, it does have a few more challenges than the bascule. The primary reasons are that vulnerability, that the main machinery is down lower the water. We also have a challenge because if you looked at the existing bridge, the pivot pier is essentially right in the middle of the water. So the bridge is balanced, it's symmetrical on either side, and that's great, except that it only provides 51 feet of clearance. To provide the 90 feet of clearance, we need a bigger bridge, and the way to do that this side is to use what we call a bobtail. It's an asymmetric bridge. So the pivot point is over here on the east side of the bridge. We have a long arm that covers out over the channel, and then we have a short back arm that has a big counterweight in it to balance the effect of the long arm. So these are not that unusual. The disadvantage is it's just less economical, which is why the swing span options are higher cost than the bascule, because you're building more bridge than you really need here for that. There's also some additional costs in the fendering. We have to have these dolphins out here at the ends, so when the end of the swing bridge is sticking out there, it's not subject to being hit by a vessel. The other thing that is very significant is because the swing bridge, as it moves, it's taking up a lot of space in the channel. In fact, it's swinging to where we would put the temporary bridge. So it makes it very difficult to do this, get it to work with a temporary bridge. And there's some costs to add to do that. All right, so let's just take a quick look at renderings of those. So this is the single lane swing span with 1 sidewalk. A couple things you can see here. The pivot pier is over on that end. We still have what we call a rest pier, which is out in the water to keep the span just what we need to get the 90 feet, nothing really more than that. You can see the kind of the height of the bridge. There's a little bit of retaining wall in here. Going down in height as you get to the driveways. Straightforward. Very similar for this one. It's just a little wide. It's got another lane. And I will, sorry, I'm blocking people there, but just kind of flipping back and forth, you can sort of see the narrower bridge, so sort of less footprint, which is why it has less impacts on several things. And then we get wider. Now we go to the bascule, and the bascule has some advantages. This type of bascule, we can put the bulk of all the machinery well up above the water. That's why you'll see with the renderings, I'll show you that it's an overhead counterweight type. The operating machinery, like with the swing span, we've got all the mechanisms and everything located on the east side of the bridge, which is where we want them. So if there is something wrong, and service people are coming in, they're coming from the correct, easy side to get to. So the bascule, it's a shorter overall movable span. The movable span is the most important part of the project. If you looked at cost per square foot for a movable bridge versus a fixed bridge might be $150, $200 a square foot, and movable might be $2,000 to $3,000 a square foot. So the less you need a movable span, the better off. The other really big thing is we developed a scheme for this, and with the temporary, we can build the new movable bridge on that north alignment. Just build it parallel to where it's going to be at the end. We build some temporary fixed structures But then we build new fixed supports and everything over here, and in a short closure period, we jack the bridge over and use it. So we save $10, $12 million in temporary movable bridge cost by doing it this way. So that's why you see that big delta in cost between the swing spans and the basket. It's not just that the basket was more efficient, it's really that we're avoiding having to build that temporary bridge. And here we go, you see the movable bridge. This is the single lane. And you can see it does have an overhead counterweight. And again, the reason for that is we don't have a pit. So if you were to go down to Albee Road, for example, and look at that one, there's a big counterweight on that bridge, but it's all down underneath. But that bridge is high enough, just barely above the water, that it doesn't flood much in there. Here, we wouldn't be high enough. We don't want to have a pit with machinery, electrical equipment, and so forth with flood. So we're able to keep all of that up above. We go 2 sidewalks. Back here. Single lane, 2 lane, with 1 sidewalk, 2 lane, 2 sidewalks. In most respects, the two alternatives, whether it's a basket or a swing, from a standpoint, fairly similar. Okay, so I mentioned that we would have to signalize a single lane bridge, so I want to walk through kind of how that works. What we did is we did a traffic analysis that simulates traffic flowing across the bridge, and it simulates the main events we have here, where we have a bridge that, in heavy times of vessels, is going to open every 20 minutes. And that opening is going to take about 7 minutes. So that leaves us 13 minutes to make sure that all traffic clears before we go to the next opening. Otherwise, things would compound and really get us in trouble. So this is looking at basically current traffic volumes. And what are plotted here, these arrows, is the queue. So this is the buildup, kind of the length and the number of cars, trucks, etc. that would build up. And we see, interestingly enough, so AM traffic is heavier going westbound than eastbound, so the queue is bigger there. And then PM traffic is the opposite. And what we'll see is that with current traffic, these clear pretty quick. So, this would be looking at if we look at the top, right? So this is our traffic in the morning, and we're queued up. And with the first cycle of traffic, we get the traffic to clear. So 1 cycle is approximately 3 minutes. There's time in there for the vehicles to make sure they've cleared before they start coming the other direction. And then you get about 70 seconds of time for each movement to take place. Then if we look at the PM traffic, it's very similar, except we can see that because the queue is a little bit bigger, you get a little bit of residual traffic there. It doesn't clear in the first cycle, but it clears out in the second cycle. So now let's look at, we're projecting traffic out now to 2050. And we've had a lot of discussion with many of you about traffic, and it's a project that increase traffic. And so, again, it's not a capacity improvement project, so there's no need to put additional lanes out there for traffic and so forth. We run these numbers so that we can project things and look at them. In actuality, is the traffic going to increase 3% every year, as is projected by numbers looking at the past 5-6 years, projecting that forward? Kind of hard to tell, but we felt obligated to run sort of a litmus test here. Is the single bridge good, even if we got the worst case increase in traffic? So that's what we did. And you can see the queues under that traffic are bigger, right? And particularly over here, you see it backing up onto South KCP. Good news is they still clear, relatively quickly, So look at those. So we can see that the first cycle, we get some traffic, residual traffic waiting on the east side, and then it clears there. Now, of course, we go to this one. This is the one that's the most problematic. It takes, into the third cycle for this to clear. First cycle, leading second cycle. And of course, as these cycles are waiting, you're going to get some new traffic building up. We've got to get that to clear. So that one's into the third cycle. So that's about 9 minutes or so before it clears off there completely. So now let's compare that to the two-lane bridge. The two-lane bridge has the same challenge with a bridge opening. You're still going to get bridge openings 20 minutes apart, and it takes 7 minutes or so. But in this case, and I'm just going to show you the worst case, which is the eastbound and the PO. Because we're not signalized anymore, which is a lane flowing free in each direction, that just kind of clears out very good. So, okay. So now let's talk about some of the historic bridge issues. So we are working through this with the county's staff on historic preservation. And in the event that we do go to a replacement, we're looking at some sort of mitigation measures, and this is one that's been discussed. It's to do something to honor the existing bridge by repurposing a section of the bridge with some historic markers. There's a place for this right along Blackburn Point Road, right near where the bridge is. I'm a believer that anything you do like this needs to be kind of eyesight distance from where the original bridge was placed. It doesn't do that much good to put it off somewhere, right? It's much better if it's right there, close to the site. So these are locations that we looked at. That one that I'm showing you there is this location A. So it's right between the park and the bridge. Nice sidewalk along there. We looked at some other areas. We could put a piece of the truss on either side, sort of the gateway, either leading up to the bridge or into the park. And then there's another area in the park over here, which would be where we could put a full truss or the bulk of the truss. So that's what's being proposed at the moment. There's two matrices out there, right? There's one that's an evaluation matrix, and there's one that's this assessment matrix. So the evaluation matrix has all the data in it, right? It's got a bunch of numbers on impacts and costs and all sorts of things. This is just a tool to kind of pull this together and be able to take a quick look at it. But there's a couple of important things I want people to understand. The cost ratio here is as if you took that present value number, I showed you before, 31 million, and you divide that into the other replacement costs, and it just kind of gives you a ratio. It's, again, it's to give you an idea of how those all stack up against each other. Everything in between there is we have these sort of categories, and they're ranked from 1 to 4. It's not weighed, meaning it's not saying that one ranking in one category is more valuable than another. It's just a simple way to look at them in different categories. And because of that, these numbers over here, which is just a total of these, it's not intended to be this is what you pick your bridge from, right? It's just there to show you how things kind of compare. It's not a program where you put data in it and it spits out and says, here's your answer. It's there so that people can look at it. And hopefully it gave you something to look at and say, well, why are these ranked this way? And maybe you went over to the evaluation matrix and say, okay, now I can see some of these factors are. And after the meeting, we'd be glad to answer any questions about that. Project schedule, we kind of start off with this, but here's where we are. So we've got a meeting with the Board of County Commissioners. Between this meeting and that meeting, we have interaction with the Historic Preservation Board and process on that to try and get that process moving forward. And then at some point down the road, we'll have an official NEPA public hearing that presents the recommended alternative, and we'll finish up a whole lot of work on documenting everything and complete the study. So, you know, the most important things at the meeting here, yes, we want to provide information to you, try and educate you on the project and the alternative we looked at. But it's feedback, so I want to make sure, encourage everybody, give us written comments. Those are the best. We're listening to you when you're talking to us, but the best thing is to write something down. We've got all the comments that come in, gives us a way of looking at them, seeing what the public is looking for. So hopefully we can address concerns that come in. And with that, we'll open it up.
Jim, thank you very much. Can we just get a quick round of applause for Jim? When I grow up, I want to give a presentation like Jim does. That's great. Question and answer period is now. I'll go around. If you have a question, put your hand up. I'll bring the mic to you. Keep it close to your mouth, right? Okay, we got it. And if you can maybe try to keep your questions to one good question instead of like less than 5. It makes it a little bit difficult for us to follow them all for one, and then it might be capitalizing on time other people want to ask questions. Okay, so I'm going to start over here with this gentleman in the red shirt.
I got a question about, is it on?
Yeah, it's close to the mouth. Rather get in
I had
there.
a question, the keep the current bridge scenario. Are you also thinking about signaling that scenario as well? Like right now, cars pull up, and as I understand it, if it's clear, a pack of cars go, so it's in effect, we're signaling ourselves, right? A pack goes through, then a car pulls up, then that pack goes through. Are they thinking about putting a signal in there to change that, or just keep it the way it is right now?
I'll be honest with you, that's a great idea to look at. We have not included that in our project, but that'd be a very good comment to make if you could. Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that yet. It's a good idea. Like I say, I see the same thing as far as cars not abiding by the let's alternate traffic thing. So that's something we could potentially look into.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if you keep the old one, some of the safety features are for big trucks and bigger vehicles. Why don't you just restrict the weight going over the bridge? And the traffic going over the bridge? Because all the commercial trucks come in from the south and come up. We don't need big trucks going over that bridge. And also, sorry for you guys with a big boat. I got a boat with a bimini top. It drops down so I can go under there. Sorry if you have to wait.
So bridge loading, weights. Currently, the bridge is not restricted for legal load limits that are on the road. They've gone through engineering analysis that have kept the bridge so it does not have to be weight restricted. We did have an analysis, I think, in 2022 that did show that it required some additional work to maintain the bridge in a status that did not require a load rating. Those repairs were done, and in 2023 it was reassessed and shown not to require a load rating.
Just a follow-up to his question, if you did that, would it extend the bridge's life longer?
There would be no reason. There would be no reason to do that because it meets the requirements as they designed to carry all the legal load limits.
That wasn't my question. My question is, if you put a load requirement on that bridge so that they couldn't do this, would it extend the life of the bridge longer?
I don't know that we've assessed that. So I don't know there's a reason to because it's not currently load rated. The goal of our bridge program is to not have weight restrictions.
You don't think heavier trucks wear a bridge faster than lighter vehicles?
They may, but that's not the.
Let me
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
chime in on it. So, the primary issues we have with the bridge is ongoing deterioration of the environment. So there is, many of you are probably familiar, we've been to these meetings before, we've talked about fatigue. So fatigue is a failure that's achieved through repetitive loading of these members. So as long as though they're prepared to maintain capacity, it's, kind of avoiding the fatigue issue. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't catch up to us at some point, and you might have a member that cracks, and and then that member would have to be, the bridge would have to be shut down until that member is fixed. But the primary thing that's driving the deterioration, if, for example, the piles underneath has nothing to do with trucks driving across the bridge. It's all about it sitting in the environment.
So I have a question here about what goes on under the bridge. There's a lot of study of what goes over the bridge. What is the impact on the waterway when you go to the 90-foot? What does that mean in terms of boat traffic and types of boats, sizes of boats, amounts of boats that are going to be going up and down the coastal as a result of this change? Has that been studied?
Yes, so we have been in contact with the West Coast Inland Navigation District and the Coast Guard. And their data indicates it's not so much an increase in the number or size of vessels that go through, it's really safety that they're looking for. So, you know, what you have right now is you get barges that go through there that are 45 feet wide, they go through a 50-foot channel. So they would much prefer to go through a 90-foot channel than 45-foot. Channel. So I'm not saying that there wouldn't be some additional, that's always a possibility. There are vessels that don't use that waterway right now. They have to go out into the Gulf because of the restriction right there. Now, how many of those are, you know, exactly which size they're I'm not certain, but there probably would be some barges that would come through here rather than going through the Gulf, because it's a lot cheaper. You know, a large cost to ship things out in the Gulf versus shipping them on the coast.
Yeah, I have two questions, just really quick, if that's okay. I'll make them really fast. You mentioned safety of pedestrians and bikes going across the bridge and accidents and whatnot. Were there any studies done on accidents on the quay itself? Because I would tend to think that it's almost just as hazardous to be riding a bike or walking on the quay, which is the
Just real quick, that's not within our project limits, so no, we have to.
Right, address the safety concern. Second question would be, have you guys talked about potentially scheduling bridge openings, like every hour or so, so the boats?
They're on schedules now. They went on schedule recently to 20 minutes. That's a negotiation with the Coast Guard, and so that's about the best you can get.
Yeah.
Because of the number, this is a very, very active bridge. One of the most active, both as far as openings in the state of Florida.
Could they schedule it out of the past open?
Jim, are both vestibule and swing bridges 14 feet vertical?
Yes. Yeah, geometry for both alternatives, the clearance of the channel, the height of the bridge, widths,
I saw in your slides in the last meeting, you had a 16-foot option. Is that out now?
Yeah, that is for the temporary alignment, the shifted alignment, because there's a little bit, you get a little bit of extra length because you're kind of wiggling around and going over there. So we could get slightly more clearance on that north alignment, but it has more impact to the 4%. Yes.
Hi. One short question and then a longer question. I'm a little confused because I thought that the purpose of the study was to see if the bridge that we have now is okay and can be rehabbed in addition to the new alternatives. However, when this presentation started, it says if we're going to do it, how are we going to do it? Which seems to not lead to a restoration exploration. And I know there are certified historic bridge engineer folks out there, and I'm wondering if that has been explored and to what extent.
So we do, that is the no bill is essentially to repair the bridge.
But if we didn't do a restoration of survey, I mean, repair, we can repair all the time, but that's not going to fix some of the big problems that.
Well, actually, so as far as that goes, we did look into that. So we have a lot of limitations on what we can do to improve the bridge, not restore it, but to improve it, right? Because of the narrow width, there's no extra width there to put barriers on, for example. We don't have a way to put a sidewalk on it. Okay? So we did look at all those
I
options.
mean, I'm talking about the crossovers that are rusted and have holes in them and stuff like that on your video. Critical fractures, which is a term, by the way, is not used anymore by the engineering world. But what about that? I'm talking about coming in with a complete restoration of the bridge to last a lot longer. Surely that would be cheaper and less carbon footprint than building a whole new bridge with a lot of carbon.
And that's what I'm telling you, essentially, that's what the repair option is to replace those members.
My question is, has there been a traffic study done on the key? And do you recognize how much more traffic is going to be put onto the key, which opens an avenue for people coming on, trespassing, and we have a horrific problem with that already. People parking on the road because they can get over, and we'll have all kinds of cars parked on the street.
So we have not done, in conjunction with this project, we have done a specific study on traffic between the bridges. We do know it's a very constrained roadway. There's not a whole lot you can do with that. As far as the additional traffic that might come because of, I'm just thinking of the tsunami, right? I don't know that we've looked at how much more traffic would come, but the single lane bridge would be the same problem. But I'm not sure how much more traffic would be generated by a two-lane bridge. It'd be more efficient traffic because it's not regulated at the bridge. But I don't know that there would be necessarily more traffic just because of two.
Efficient for them to come on.
Yeah, of course.
My question has to do with the environmental issue. I saw in one of the
Hold the mic closer, please.
isn't it? Oh, right, I have to eat it, okay. So, I see that there is a study that you are in the process of completing regarding the environment, specifically looking at the seagrass, the mangroves, the essential fish habitat, the estuarine nursery, the manatees, the sea turtles, and other protected species. What I don't see is whether or not there is a side-by-side comparison with replacing the bridge versus restoring the existing bridge.
So we do have, on the evaluation board, we have the impacts to seagrass and all those sort of things are on there for the various alternatives. So there are some potential impacts for that just because the new bridge is wider. If you're referring to changing the channel width, we have looked at that and we don't expect there to be any difference for sea life and so forth having a wider channel.
No, nothing. Thank you very much.
It seems that the audience is bringing up issues that will be helpful to this, like a stoplight and whatever, which would eliminate the bike accidents and whatever. It feels like the city or the county has an agenda to make the new bridge, and nobody's really looking into different ways to save the old bridge. One of the things that comes to my mind is, can the bridge be lifted? You said that the mechanism is too close to the water. Can you raise it up 4 feet, 5 feet? And the gentleman's statement about, can you have heavy trucks come in from someplace else? I understand that the city wants to have no restrictions on bridges, but we want to have this bridge saved. And if heavy trucks would allow it to last a lot longer, that seems a reasonable request.
There was a question in there.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
With any increase
Closer.
in the height.
Ms. Davis, closer. Closer to your mouth. There you go.
With any increase in the height of the bridge deck, there has to be an increase in the level of the roadway exiting the bridge. What have your studies shown to be the maximum elevation of the roadway in front of the library building?
as I mentioned early on, the profile is restrained by maintaining access to the library, fish house, and also to the park on the east side. So our alignment always comes down by the time there's a turn in and out of those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you remember, at the very end of the bridge, we're about 5 feet higher, but we're coming down, whereas the existing profile is relatively flat. So that's how we get that to work.
This gentleman clarified his question was, can you take the existing
mechanism,
and
raise it up
so it's out of the zone of the water environment?
Technically, you could, but again, the issue is that the Coast Guard wants a 90-foot channel. So if we're going to put in a new pier to raise it up, and we have to get approval from it, they have told us they would not permit that. So that's our constraint there.
Why would they care if the bridge is higher than it is now?
Well, because when you make it higher, you got to put it on something that's going to hold it up when it's higher. Right? The higher it is, the more loads are on the foundation.
Just a comment. First of all, I guess, when did this become on the agenda? Was this, you said it was BCC, I spoke to you outside, you said the BCC wanted a study. Who put this on the agenda with the BCC? Who is pushing this project in the first place? That's question number one. Hold on, I have two.
Yeah, I could. Sure. The project itself was part of the voter-approved surtax referendum from 2022. So inherently, the county voters put it on the agenda in that surtax program. It's a specific project.
And just my impression of watching this, sort of echoing this gentleman, it's a very one-sided presentation.
Yeah.
It's talking about I'm just letting you know, because when you're going to present it to the BCC, and I'm sure a lot of these constituents are going to reach out to commissioners and whatnot, you talk about safety, 10 crashes in 5 years, how many within 700 feet of both sides of the bridge, how many were actually related to the bridge versus drunk people on Casey Key Fish House on a bicycle or something like that. So, I hear a lot of concerns about speed and pedestrian traffic on Casey Key, and the answer is, well, we don't study that. You spend a lot of time about the bridge or related to the bridge. There is an impact on the folks that come onto the key as well. So I would just say that this is, to me, a very one-sided presentation in my viewing of it, just so you know.
Just to note, we did introduce the single lane replacement because of comments we got about generally people out on the morning to have traffic regulated. So.
Okay, am I eating the microphone adequately?
You're doing okay.
Okay, good. So, Sarasota County staff recently reported to the County Commission that there's a $1.7 billion transportation fund shortfall, which is kind of a lot of money. Secondarily, the state, I guess, inspects bridges every year, and they've inspected this bridge, I know 2024, 2025, it was listed as in fair condition. And there's 120 bridges in Sarasota County which have that same fair condition listing, most of which have a significantly higher traffic flow and volume. So, what criteria was used to prioritize the replacement of this historic National Register and locally designated bridge over other county bridge needs? And I want to stress the local designation because that was approved by the County Commission, recognizing the exceptional importance of this to the community from a historic standpoint. So that was my question. What was the criteria used?
I'm just trying to boil it down. The criteria used to come up with the project itself.
This one over the other 120 in the same condition.
Sure.
With higher volume levels.
We have an ongoing bridge repair replacement program. This is one of those projects that are in there. We have another project that's going on at Sarasota Key Basquiat Bridge. We're doing a complete rehabilitation of that. We have other bridge replacement projects that are going on around the county. Specifically, this one is being evaluated for replacement because of its condition. If you take a look at James Stock is back here. He's our resident structural engineer. This is probably one of his favorite bridges. He's got a video out there examining things. If you want to go on the website and look at it, he goes through a very detailed evaluation of and explanation of what's the condition of the existing bridge. And I recently went with James and our bridge maintenance contractor out there, and we went through it again, and James points out these things when he goes on the bridge. He's like, if that goes, then the whole thing goes. And there's a lot of critical things on the bridge that have been repaired, and the repairs are falling apart. And so there's just holistically, the bridge itself is a major concern for me as a transportation director, and the folks that are like James that are more specialized in structures than I am. But it is one of our most, out of the 180 bridges that we had, this is probably one of the most that keeps me up at night. Because if something were to happen, we could potentially isolate people on the island, at least a portion of the island. If the Albee Road Bridge is having an issue in this one, we need a more reliable long-term investment if we were going to replace it. If not, we need to do a major rehabilitation so it is more reliable for the long term.
Thank you for saying that, because before he said that these repairs were the same thing as a major rehabilitation, which it's not. So thank you for saying that.
Again, I have clarified the difference between a repair project and a rehabilitation. A rehabilitation project, by definition, brings the bridge up to current standards or processes design exceptions or variations for all items that do not meet standard. So an engineer at the county has to sign off and say, I'm okay with this not meeting standards, we can keep it.
Jim, could I add to that? So I would say the difference between this bridge and the others that you noted is it's steel. It's also what we call, if you're a bridge engineer, a fracture critical structure, which means that if we lose one of those members, we would either have to shut the entire bridge down until we could repair it, or it would collapse. And the fracture critical members, that many of them were shown to you tonight, are some of the worst condition. We had to repair one of the floor beams, or a couple of floor beams when we did the load rating, so we could make sure that vehicles could cross it. I want to note too that right now, the repairs that we're doing on North Casey Key, we need to have some heavy trucks being able to cross that bridge at this time, even though we're using barges. Okay, so I wanted to also mention, so we have fracture critical, this is fracture critical bridge, those others are not fracture critical bridges. The other thing is that this bridge has fatigue prone details in it, which we kind of touched on earlier. And those are places where cracks will often form. So the age of this bridge, and it's really not so much the heaviness of the truck, it's more the cycle that we're getting into bridge speak now, but it's not so much the heaviness of the truck, it's the load cycles, and then the number of load, or the number of cycles that goes through. So load isn't 100% the cause of that, but we do keep an eye on those fatigue prone details. So in fact, if you looked at that report that you're referencing, I don't know if you got to see the whole thing. There are pages and pages and pages of it, and every single fracture critical member is marked. Every single fatigue prone detail is marked and looked at in depth. Let me say one last thing.
It's exempt, so I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Couldn't give it to me.
No, I can't give it to you. If I could say one last thing as well. So in 2007, this is what keeps me up at night. Fracture critical, fatigue prone, but also in 2007, you might remember the I-35 West Bridge that collapsed in Minnesota. It had thinned out gusset plates. We have several gusset plates right now that when we load rated them, they marked them out, the engineers that did the load rating, and they said, you guys have to keep an eye on these gusset plates because they're aggressively deteriorating, and it's gonna get to a point to where if you don't replace them, you will have to load rate the bridge. And we don't, FDOT, thank God, does a really good job of checking those, and they measure them every single time they do an inspection. But those are the things that keep me up at night and concern me. And so for me, this is a safety issue. There's no conspiracy.
I'm gonna hit this side for a couple questions and we'll go back to the other side.
My first question is, I haven't heard anything prior about this temporary bridge construction on the side. What the heck is that gonna cost? I'm just curious, do you guys have an estimate of what it's gonna right there, so can you please?
Yes, sir, it's included in the cost estimates that are shown on the evaluation matrix. And the component,
Standalone, how much is that?
the component for that is over $10 million.
Okay, so my understanding is if you spend $6 million, it would spread this bridge out to 2038.
No.
That's the basic cost to do it. So if you're spending $10 million to build a temporary bridge and then tearing it down to build a $70 million bridge, or whatever the heck numbers you guys are throwing around it, I just want to have some realistic numbers as to, when you say, okay, we got to spend money here, here, and here, and here, and here. How much real money are we talking about to stretch it out for X amount of years? What are the real numbers as opposed to just saying, yeah, it's on this and it's on that agenda? So 10 million to build the temporary bridge, and so much, how much is it just to go in with steel and fix the one that's there for however long?
So just remember, the $6.2 million is an initial repair.
That'll last till when?
5 years.
5 years. And then how much more are you gonna have to spend?
Something similar.
Okay, so let's say we spend 10 right now.
And then 5 years later, as I mentioned, you're looking at a number of expenditures over time to keep the bridge in service. And then at some point, you're gonna get something that is bigger than those numbers.
Right, but 10 million for the temporary one, or 10 million to stretch this out for so many years, is that what I'm understanding?
But, and if you, just to note too, you did listen, that if we go with the basket, that is the temporary bridge that gets jacked over.
Gets jacked over, no, I'm just saying.
So you don't spend the temporary, you don't spend the $10 million.
All right, question here now. I know we the taxpayers have already put a few million into these studies to consult. Did you take some of that money and actually peel back the diapers of whatever you call on the end of the project? What did you find when you did it? Because I'm assuming you did take some of these millions of dollars and actually did that to see what the conditions of the structure is. Could you share with us what you saw when you did that?
The bridges are inspected every year, so we're using the bridge inspection reports and then our own visual observations and our experience on that. So
you're saying you took the coverings off and actually...
No, we did not take the coverings
So
off.
it's hypothetical that they're in trouble, because the state inspects it every year.
Yes, the state gives it a 5 right now, out of 9. And so just curious, all this money's been spent but we don't know for sure. What is the condition of the patient? We don't know.
I told you, in my opinion, it's poor, so.
So this might be directed more towards the county. There's several bridges, swing bridges in the state of Florida that are on this National Historic Registry. Snow Reed Bridge in Fort Lauderdale, which is over a navigable waterway. It's 4-foot clearance from the salt water. It also is a 50-foot spread, which is identical. So it's lower, closer to the salt water than Blackburn Point Bridge. It's a 50-foot clearance, horizontal clearance. And the city of Fort Lauderdale has managed to maintain that bridge. It is 10 to 24 hours a day, opens on demand, and it is a very highly populated, navigable waterway.
Very familiar with the bridge. I've performed repairs and rehabilitation of it 2 times in my career. So
it can be done?
yeah.
So it can be done?
And it's not over the intercoastal waterway, so that's why it doesn't need a 90-foot channel.
Is it over salt water?
No, it's over brackish water. So we replaced the entire pier that it sits on, all the machinery, most of the trucks. Did that 30 years ago.
So are you saying that the bay is salt water and not brackish water?
Yes.
So you've got a chart out there that shows the bottom line cost and present value of the various alternatives. You've got the no build, and then you got the 2 types of swing bridge. And as you pointed out, the cheapest alternative on a present value basis is the no build, right? On your assumptions, and this follows up with this gentleman's. The cheapest alternative for taxpayers under your numbers is you repair this thing, keep it going for 10 years, and then you build a new the new bridge in roughly 10 years, and it's assumptions, but your present value of that option's cheaper by a fair amount than new bridges now. So the question, my question is, okay, the county and governments are kind of famous for kind of going over budget on capital projects. Okay, they tend to do that. Would it be wrong for me to think that, okay, you probably have a better handle on what it takes to repair that thing? And when you go before the Historic Preservation Board, they start asking you for what alternatives did you look at? People are going to be saying, all right, did you look at weight restrictions? Why are there cement trucks and semis going over there? I've got pictures of, somebody's going to bring pictures of bike lanes and pedestrian lanes bolted on to swing bridges, right? People are going to be bringing in these things and saying, okay, did you look at all these alternatives to taking out the bridge? And if they exist, and shouldn't you look at them, especially when the cheapest alternative for taxpayers is to repair this thing and push off, and then build a new bridge in roughly 10 years? Why just from a taxpayer perspective, isn't that an appealing approach? Gives you another 10 years to do studies.
If you would, I am not being forthright here and showing you the numbers and it's almost always cheaper to repair something than it is to replace it. That's right. But you're dealing with lack of reliability, right? You have safety issues that don't get addressed through that. So again, it's, do you want the new car, safety issues, automatic brake stuff, all that kind of stuff, or do you want to keep your old car? That's a decision of looking at the value of those. My numbers are just looking at the cost from an engineering perspective. So,
and where I'm disagreeing with you is, if you haven't studied things like bolting the bike lane,
we have.
We haven't seen that. We don't see that in any of your.
I discussed that at earlier meetings as well. So we looked at that. We talked about why it's not practical on this bridge. I'm assuming the bridge you're talking about is the Mathers Bridge.
I'm just kidding.
That's the one that I've seen pictures.
People send around.
Okay, just so you know, the Mathers Bridge, which is going to Indian River over Merritt Island area, our company did work on it 10 years ago. We replaced the substructure and the whole swing span. Again, not over there close to waterway. We could keep the same channel and so forth, and we were able to do it.
Okay, I just think a common criticism that you're confronting this evening is that the engineers in this project spend a lot of time thinking about new bridges, and just not enough time creatively thinking about alternatives in keeping this current bridge. You know, let cement trucks drive over it, pounding your pinions into dust every year, right? And you haven't addressed questions like, well, what if you stopped doing that? What if you limited the uses? What if you redefined the uses of this bridge? Really, the brines that you guys have, put that into alternatives for keeping it as much as you have the alternative.
I can assure you that we have looked at those, but if you would like to see more information on that.
Here is what,
Ma'am, the next question's over here. We'll get to you. Just put your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to look at this as, how is this going to affect the people that live around there? I have a place, the condominium there, I live right near there, I cross there, I go to the shopping center in the corner. I'm constantly having been affected by that bridge. First off, any traffic that goes on Casey Key extra, to me, is not a good idea. So a 2-lane bridge doesn't make any sense to me. Plus, people will then be speeding more. That's maybe, do the people on Casey Key want a new bridge? Is that something they want? Have they been asked of the people that live there? Secondly, at 41 and Blackburn Point Road, it's probably the worst intersection in Sarasota County. There are constantly accidents there, horrible accidents, and they'll cause, even if it causes 2 more cars an hour, it's not good to have more traffic there. The bridge maybe needs to be, it's definitely not in good condition. I was in Minneapolis 4 hours before that bridge collapsed, and I crossed there, and they were pounding it with those big jackhammers, because they were fixing the surface, and we didn't want to go across there the next morning because of that. And so, yes, things are talking about with the trucks and all makes a difference on that bridge. But anyway, how does that, how does it improve my life for them to fix that bridge? I don't really see how it's going to improve my life. It's just, it's just going to make more traffic if they go to especially if they go to the 2-lane one. So if they do something, they got to do the 1-lane one. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
And folks, just as a general PSA, if you have questions, concerns, and majority comments, please use the comment cards that are at the exit. Write down your stuff. All of that will get to the county commission when they get their package to consider this when we take it to them in October, I think is when we're talking about it.
I got a follow-up question, something somebody brought up earlier, and that is on your cost estimates. You have like repairs 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then you're talking about major repairs down the line. I didn't see it, and I can't see from back here, whether you had a cost estimate. What if we just go and say, okay, we're gonna keep the bridge as it is, we're gonna repair all the structure parts of it, we're not gonna put Band-Aids on it, but we're gonna bring it not up to code, but we're gonna rebuild the existing bridge the way it was built, so it's preserved historically and it's sound. We don't have things that are corroding. We've replaced key structures, but I didn't see that. I see the cost estimates you have, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, then a big expenditure, and I don't think you're comparing apples to apples by doing that. I think you need a figure. What if we do everything right now? Keep it as it is, but just fix it. Don't bring it up to code, because you can't. But what's that compared to the other costs? And I think it would be less, because you're not having the 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. No, I understand. You're not changing the pilings. You're not.
Yeah, let me address you.
Okay, thank you.
But so the reason we do that is because most agencies have funding issues. So what we're doing is we're spreading out the work and doing it in logical groups of addressing the most critical items. I'll use my car analogy again. If you go in and you need a new transmission, you don't say replace the engine while we're here, because you think you're going to get another 2-3 years out of the engine, right? So we're just putting those off. So it's actually cheaper to do it the way we have it than if we brought all work up front and did it up front. Now, in many respects, it's a great way to do it if you can find the money to do everything all at once, because you do get some efficiencies from that.
Yeah, but you're going to try to find the money to build a completely new bridge. So I think if you're comparing apples to apples, we need to know what that is.
Hi. Well, first, good job to Spencer, who's running around and running up calories. Yeah. Mr. Phillips, they're talking about comparing apples with apples. The point that I feel that you might be missing a little bit when you're talking about cars, we collect classic cars. So what are you going to do about you're treating this thing like it's an old car? This is a classic bridge.
Where do you keep your classic cars?
Outside.
Outside?
We do. We keep it wet and we take care of it.
And when did you, how long you had?
It's a 1952 Willys and we have a Bronco. And lots of people have old cars.
They do.
And composers have written beautiful symphonies about bridges. So I kind of don't like, but I like you, and I think you did a fine job, but I don't like you comparing this beautiful bridge to a car that needs a transmission. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate the feedback.
Well, I'm sitting here a little incredulous at the fact that you don't have funding for this bridge yet. And it's such a contrast from what happened when I got involved with saving the bridge 36 years ago. Because 36 years ago, actually 1989, there was funding set aside for a replacement bridge for Blackburn Point. But what happened was a very elegant, scholarly man on KCP, Dudley Dudley Slocum, was interviewed in the Herald Tribune, and they were saying that the sentiment on Casey Key was to not replace it for several reasons. One, it was a character-defining feature of Casey Key. It was historic. It was also a traffic limiter. And so what happened was the direction shifted dramatically after that. I got involved, and we got what was called the 106 review.
Yes.
And that required, because there was federal money involved, that we seriously consider the preservation alternative. And so it was approached with intention to preserve it at that time. And we got the cooperation of the county transportation director, the county commission, the Coast Guard, the members of the legislature, and we brought in experts to evaluate the preservation alternative, and it was decided, yes, to spend that money to preserve the bridge rather than replace it. And I bring that up because Dudley Slocum, who was a New Yorker, was very much interested in the bridges in Manhattan. And around that time, they were considering what to do about the 59th Street Bridge, the Queensboro Bridge. That's a 1909 bridge. And that bridge has been repaired several times, it's been restored several times, and it is a New York City landmark. So there's no question that New Yorkers would be outraged at the prospect of tearing down that bridge, and I cannot imagine that the sentiment on Casey Key is any different than that right now. So we need to approach it from the preservation point of view, but also my question really is, why are you now just talking about presenting this to the preservation board? Look at your chart there. We're way down the line. This should have happened at the very beginning because it is in the National Register. It was not in the National Register in 1989, but it is now, and that should have been handled from the very beginning. So why are you just now going to the preservation board and not bringing it to the state preservation office?
They are involved. Once you go to federal funds and they get involved, we're following the
Yeah, but why now? Why so late in the game?
You mean late in the game in this project, or?
Late in the game in this project.
We're not late in the game. I mean, it's just like we're hearing, you guys want to see all this information. We have to prepare all that before we take it. So that's.
But I put you a little chart, little dots going across, and how far you are. Should have been from the start. It should have been from the very beginning.
We should have known it was going on.
In the future, will you, with historic bridges, will you do, well, this is just a follow-up on this. Will you start with include the preservation organizations from the beginning when you do historic?
We work with all these agencies throughout the process.
From the beginning?
Yes.
Because you're meeting with them in the
Yes,
future,
we have.
we're pretty far into
Look at your chart right there. You have it this close to me on your own chart.
That is a general schedule, that is not a detail of everything that we've done.
Yeah, actually, they were here the last public meeting. The local preservation board, one of their employees, I think their manager was here. They've been involved. The actual hearing before the board is in a normal order of progress with this project. So they've been involved, like Jim's saying. It's just the actual hearing before the board, the discussion with them really needs to have, the cake somewhat baked in order before we get there.
Correspondence on that.
Yes, absolutely. And they've been involved in the meetings that we've had, so they're certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question. I think, listening, I believe a lot of people, Melanie was born and raised in Sarasota. We came down to the Key about 25 years ago. And I like it slow. I don't want 2 lanes, an easier path for bicycles and more pedestrians. The roads aren't built for it, right? So you can expand a bridge and make it easy for people to get nowhere. It would be a big mistake. It would be a big mistake. So the other, and I think that is the historic nature of the bridge, which is probably our best effort. And no one's going to admit it, but there is a clear path and preference on the county level where this goes.
Yeah.
And the concern among our household is that when a government starts blaming another part of the government for not being able to do something, I just don't really give a crap anymore. Like the Coast Guard. I don't care, I don't want that 90 feet wide. I don't care if they want it 90 feet wide to get it, you know, and then you're gonna come in and you're at a higher elevation. It changes the entire approach to what is one of the most really beautiful areas in Sarasota County.
Yes.
So, having said all of that, my actual question is, if we make the enormous mistake of replacing this bridge in a wrong way, will the traffic lights be smart or not smart? Will they cycle on just time or based on traffic that arrives at the bridge?
In all likelihood, they would have to be smart because the bridge openings are not always the same. Traffic can be different depending on the time of day. You may want one side to go to the other. So our anticipation is that that would be something that is adjustable or automatic based on. We've also discussed putting, so the bridge itself, a new bridge would have scanners on it to pick up to make sure there's no pedestrians, dogs, anything like that on the bridge before you go to an operation. So all the equipment will be there to monitor traffic and be able to accommodate that. So.
The answer to the question is absolutely. We would have detection on the signals, so you're not unduly waiting as it needs to be green and it's red.
Thank you for taking my second question. I have a couple on my list for people who were not able to attend, so I apologize in advance. It's going to be 3. The first one is, have the residents on Casey Key actually expressed to the county safety concerns about the bridge? That's my first simple question.
Yes.
How many people, how many residents on the Key have expressed concern about the...
I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but I did review every comment that was been recorded and all meetings we've had, and looked at those that commented about their concerns about safety was one of them, yes.
Okay, the second question from another party is, has it been recorded on the evacuation during hurricane times that there has been a trouble or any kind of issues in evacuation? Has there been any reporting issues?
Not that I'm aware of.
And let's see, I'm not sure I understand this. I guess part of what this question is in reference to, does this new bridge have anything to do with access to the Key for people who are building new hotels, new restaurants, and things of that to have public access to the beach?
No, this is not a capacity improvement project.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
I like those yes and no questions.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you stated, I think, that every bridge has to be replaced at some point. So for comparison's sake, could you say when the London Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the Golden Gate Bridge will need to be replaced?
No, I wouldn't know exactly when they're going to be replaced, but they'll be replaced at some point. Either they'll be replaced or they'll be completely reconstructed in place.
Right.
But materials don't last forever.
My question
One of them's
is,
in Arizona now.
yes, I have a couple of questions. The PD&E cost, the study cost for all of this, what we call studies and consultation, what was the cost of that and where did that money come from?
Okay, so the capital project cost is just about $2 million. That includes all of the study work and initial design, and the funding is coming out of the surtax program that I mentioned earlier.
And who initiated that and why?
It's a specific project on the surtax program that was voter approved, I believe in 2022.
Okay, that was already answered.
Yes.
And then is the cost of you had some estimates of repairs, are the pilings included in those? Like,
Only repair of pilings that we can make. It's not replaceable.
and then I just have one more comment.
Number 3.
And it's a comment.
I just want to make sure that we are making fact-based decisions and not fear-based decisions. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. As engineers, we're kind of stubborn on that, trying to make sure we have facts and information to back up any decisions, recommendations, or information.
I have to say that the people have asked some fantastic questions. In fact, I was like, oh, that's what I was going to ask. So this is, oh God, I gotta eat it. This is my statement. It's really not a question. I'm from Maine originally, and the Booth Bay Harbor Bridge is a swing bridge. It's 3 times the length of this bridge, and it's being worked by Chimbro at this moment. And they got $7 million from the federal grant, and it's going to cost a grand total of $20.3 million. 3 times the size of ours on open ocean water with salt. So, if Maine can do it, and aren't we supposed to be better? Why can't Florida do it?
Well, the answer to that is very simple, and that is that when you look at all of these bridges, you can't just look and say, this bridge here costs this. That'd be like, I'm going to go back to my automobiles now, people get driving crazy. That's like you take 2 vehicles in and you say, how much is it going to cost to fix it? Somebody says, oh, mine only cost $1,000. I said,
Okay.
well, that's crazy. Mine cost $3,000. What did you have done?
It isn't about the money, because you're going to spend $45 million that you know is going to be $65 million by the time we get a brand new bridge. What I'm saying is someone else was able to do it and rectify a 112-year-old bridge and keep it maintained. Why? You've got all these fantastic engineers. You've done a lot of hard work. Why can't you save our bridge? Thanks.
I just had a question. Is the Army Corps of Engineers or Coast Guard?
That's a long time.
Did the Coast Guard or Army Corps of Engineers come to the county and say, we'd like this bridge removed and the channel widened there?
Well, they didn't come to the county with that. So there is some history on that, going back to the 90s when the bridge, there was a PD&E, I believe that one was conducted by Florida DOT rather than the county. But so the Coast Guard at that time said they would approve rehabilitation at that time, but they will never do it again unless they get the 90-foot channel. So you said whether they're pushing it, it's their, I mean, they represent the navigation interests and the safety of those, so obviously they're looking to meet the criteria that they have established for that width. In this case, knowing that history, we as a team, right at the beginning, approached the Coast Guard to find out what their position was on the bridge going forward, and whether they were still holding to that idea that they were not going to permit something other than 90-foot channel. And so we got that feedback from them. So we did that right up front, so we knew where we'd stand with them.
I can probably talk loud enough, I don't need that. So has anyone looked at what type and how many essential vessels travel that path? Or are we just talking about rich people who have huge boats that need to get through?
Yes, we have vessel data that we use. The Florida DOT maintains a database of vessels. It's primarily looking, they do commercial vessels, right? So they're not really concerned about pleasure craft, but they keep track of commercial vessels that use every waterway within the state of Florida. And it's that information that we use. For example, you heard us say that the bridge is not designed for vessel collision. When we do a vessel collision analysis, we're looking at the actual set of types and size of vessels that are using that particular waterway to do that analysis. So we're not comparing Blackburn Point Bridge to the design that you would use on the Sunshine Skyway or something where you have big ships coming through. So yes, we have information on vessels that use the waterway.
Okay, so you're not really answering my question. I don't think so.
Well, maybe I missed.
How many essential vessels are traveling our waterway.
I apologize, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but we do have that. So.
2 a year.
Well, would you like me to sit on my lanai and count them?
That's maybe-
Because I don't think it's that many.
It is not.
Okay, so it's just for the big yachts.
We do not, no, we do not design it for yachts.
Well, they should get them to where they come down.
Exactly.
Just like the guy over there was talking about.
We do not design for yachts. We design for, in the case of the intercoastal waterway, it's barges that are controlling the vessel.
There's maybe 2 a year that count.
I guess they are right. I don't know, this just seems silly.
I agree. Okay, it's probably the Coast Guard we should be talking to about this, but okay, they want 90 feet wide. Has anybody been on the intercoastal lately? Sometimes you only have 10 feet wide and it's only 4 feet deep in the intercoastal. In 95, when we played this game, that was the breaking point. The Coast Guard said, never mind, we get it. They can't, those barges can't come anyway because it's a no-wake zone. They take a lot longer to get through and there's not enough clearance in the intercoastal. The bridge is moved. So
There is a dredging program by the Corps. There's a dredging program going on right now by the Corps.
I've been here 30 years and there's no clearance of 90 feet in the intercoastal. Siesta Bridge and
Yes.
Okay, one.
How often is it certified for David Coast Guard? Every time you make, if you make repairs, does it need to be within there?
No, it's the DOT.
Well, so there's two different things. There's an annual inspection that is run by the DOT on behalf of the local municipalities.
Okay.
So you only deal with the Coast Guard if you are making any modifications to the bridge. And then you have to coordinate with them to see if you need a permit, and whether it's both the Coast Guard and the Corps of Engineers typically.
My question is, you guys keep bringing up this 90 feet. Right now, it's 50 feet under the bridge is what the thing is. So you're basically talking about doubling the opening underneath the bridge. Not so much what we see there, but you're going to have to dredge the Casey East side of the bridge. There is no way around that because that water on that side of the bridge is maybe 5-6 feet deep. So even if you put this bridge, swingy bridge, stand-up bridge, whatever you want to do there is going to be dredging going on underneath the bridge. There is no way that, so now we have a 90-foot wide channel underneath the bridge, which, okay, great. But if you go north, like she's saying, that boat's getting stuck if it's 90 feet wide. Now, I will admit, I have seen one bridge in my 30 years in Osprey, one barge go through under that bridge. It came through late at night and went through. But I don't know that any bridge you guys build, if that thing smashes into it, is going to withstand it. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But you're like building making it for something that they're not using. When the Army Corps of Engineers designed the Intercoastal Waterway, it was during World War II. It took them till 1960-something to actually put it into place, and it was outdated almost at the time it was completed because nobody is running military ships through the Intercoastal Waterway. It is not happening, people. That was built for a different time, and this bridge was built before the Intercoastal, so it's like you're trying to find something a problem that does not exist. And the other question that I have for you is, out of everybody that's been here tonight and spoken, I haven't heard one person say, really want the bridge changed. Is there anybody in here who's been like, yeah, really need that bridge changed?
The guy in the back?
Well, you work for the county! I'm talking to public people!
No, in all seriousness.
Who is it?
Thank everyone for your comments tonight. I'm going to just wrap it up a little bit. Please make sure that you fill out your comment cards. We really appreciate everyone's input, but our purpose here is to collect all of this information and all of the perspectives and questions and points of view that you're bringing tonight. It's our job to reflect those to the board when we go talk to the county commission. All right, so they will be widely distributed as far as when and where that's going to happen. And make sure that you put your contact information on the comment card so we can get back in touch with you. But once again, thank you very much for coming tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening.